Hola, DBI. Yo soy administrador Riz. Hey guys, what's going on? Riz here, and we are back with another roleplay review. This time for Ramen, Women, and Ambitions. And this log is a type of drama and dialogue, and the arc is Once Upon a Tower. And the synopsis is that Koshoro and Saliath have awakened following the events of the struggle of the Ozaru, and they share a bonding moment talking about conquests, old flames, and all this before the master of the tower appears and binds them in a training box. Let me start by saying I really wish I had been around for the beginning of this, because when this log kind of happened, excuse me, I literally popped on, saw that these two were role playing without even knowing context. Was just like, hey, so when are we gonna do more story stuff with Once Upon a Tower? And they're like, we're literally doing it right now. But had I known that they had already had a meal, I would have changed up kind of what Corin was having them do at the end. But one thing I did want to mention was, it has been very unintentional that Corin has been leading all of their training with food. Excuse me, beforehand. Like, before they did the struggle against the Ozaru, to even get them to that mental plane, he had them eat these apples. And spoiler alert, before they get bound in their training box, he makes them eat another meal. Although they already started off eating a meal, so I was like, damn, I wish I would have known that they had already eaten. It would have made this a little bit, it would have made it a little different, but I mean, they're Saiyans can eat. But anyway, back to the log. So the log starts off, Kosho wakes up, and Kosho did a log in between the struggle of the Ozaru and this one, where he kind of, I think it's called the Moon, and he's kind of having this Hulk banner conversation with himself between the Ozaru and him and Koshoro, and he kind of is on the cusp of understanding the balance between the two of them, and he kind of comes up with this concept of the moon might be the key. I don't know where he's really going with that. I have an idea, but he kind of wakes up and he's kind of beaten up, kind of tired. We don't know if what happened in the struggle, how much kind of carried over, but he's taken a little bit of a beating. He's slowly restoring his health, and he kind of wakes up and he's just been eating ramen. He's got about 16 bowls of ramen that he's gone through. And then, Saliath kind of wakes up, and the first thing he does is dude, Coco, what's going on, man? Are you all right? What an experience that was. And, he realizes that, he's alive, Koshoro's alive, Mastroma is somewhere. And, they kind of have this bonding moment. I'm not going to go into, great detail of what's all here, but, they kind of have this, do you remember anything? Excuse me. Do you remember what happened? And he's like, yeah, kind of. And they, Kosho keeps calling him cousin, as he always does with a lot of Saiyans. But they just have this kind of bonding moment, and it really was just, I think these two just wanted to do something after the fact, and it's just a slice of life, kind of they're sitting there eating, and Saliath's not yeah, that's the first time I've ever seen the Ozaru. It's I'm losing my train of thought here. Sorry. It's the first time I've ever seen the Ozaru. It's something that I've always heard about. It's something that I've always been afraid of, but I've never had to really face it. And they kind of just go back and forth of having these conversations, and I want to say that I think, yeah, this right here was a really interesting conversation piece from Koshoro where he says, we can't all be Super Saiyans. And it's funny that he says that because Koshoro comes from a line of Super Saiyans, right? Like, we know that his brother transformed into one before he died, even though, you know, they're half-breeds. And it's like, I think, if I can speculate, like, I think Koshoro is going to find his transformation somewhere in between him, Super Saiyan, and Ozaru. And I'm not calling it Super Saiyan 4. I don't think that's it. But I think he's going to need, like, the rage bit, right? That kind of comes from Super Saiyan. I think, or at least I would hope. I hope his form is Ozaru, just, you know, not as big. Like, I would say, like, giant form Ozaru. And I was talking to Ike about this. The reason I think that would be great is because Genesis's transformation is giant form. And if Koshoro can find a way to get his own, I think that would be very interesting. But I don't think that he needs the rage so much. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But they kind of have, like, this weird, not weird, but they have this talk where, you know, there's always going to be men like Fusen. There's always going to be men like you. There's always going to be men like me. Dark times, good times, nothing stays forever. And I was around when that line was said. I just hadn't joined the roleplay yet. But that kind of what sparked me to want to jump in. But before I get to that, there was... Yes, this right here. So Saliath says, Fusen is a problem. People like him are a problem. But unfortunately, only Ascendeds can take care of a threat like that, well, without help. Is that why you're here? To push yourself to be better in case Fusen pops up. Don't want to see another one of those. And that intrigued me even more, right? So these two are kind of talking that Fusen is something that they want to stop. And that's when I was like, okay, so how do I play on that, right? And we're kind of going a little bit away from, like, a review of the role play and kind of into, like, the mindset of DMing, I guess, because I want this tower to be something that, you know, is something that both of these characters are going to walk away with, not just the impression of, oh, that was something, but I want them to really walk away with a memory or a feeling or a change. Like, I need this, I guess I don't need it, but I really want this to be a nexus point in their story. Because, again, I said this before, like, they've climbed Corrin's tower. They have ascended to heaven for martial arts, right? They are training with one of the true gods of Earth. Not God in, like, the true celestial state, right? But Muten Roshi was a god. I would say, you know, Muten Roshi was a god of martial arts in Dragon Ball. And it was really telling to me, like, that put a pin in my mind when they spoke specifically about Fusen. And, like, the thing is, even Kosho says, you know, that's really what my climb up the tower was about, my trip through the sacred lands. He thought his mission was to get stronger, to get to a level, so that the next time an animal like Fusen or the Dollmaker decided to threaten it, he could send them back to Deborah when they belong. But I'm just going to read the rest of this. But I realized while I was traveling here and climbing the tower, I'll never be strong enough to stop that kind of thing. No one ever will be. My son, he reads all these comic books about the heroes from the Ages of Mortals and Ages of Strife. And they did exactly that. These heroes fought and they trained their whole lives, and they really ended up making their monsters of their time stronger, so much stronger than I or anyone else can get, the stronger all those other peoples can get. And those heroes, most of them lose in the end, or they don't survive. So he says he wants to learn new things. He wants to keep growing stronger, not to stop those villains, but he wants to do it for me, for my own sake of challenge. Beating someone like Fusion is just icing in the cake when you get the chance. And, excuse me. And that's when I pop in, right? That's when Korin pops in and says, strength for one's own sake, huh? That surely sounds familiar. And he says, you should have stuck with your first teacher then. There's Kosho's first teacher being Nova. And it's kind of funny to me that, Kosho, I don't remember if it was Koshoro and OOC or if it was Ike directly, was like, how would Korin know that? How would Korin know that he trained with Nova? How would he even know the name Tiger? Because Korin does call him the Tiger directly. And the reason is that I needed something I needed a tool to make this personal. And when overcoming and leaving behind your earthly things is part of the climb, it's like, okay, but how, right? Who, what, when says that letting go of things is the thing that you needed to overcome it? Or the things that you did let go of, is that really what you needed, right? So to say, like, I'm climbing Korin's tower, and the true thing holding me back is my own fear of not being strong enough. But if I say, like, oh, then I'll never smoke again, I give up smoking, do I just appear up on the tower, right? So it has to be some sort of deep personal thing that the master of the tower has to know about you. And that's kind of what I was alluding to, is that since you climbed the tower and you've made it here, you've kind of already told me a lot about you. You've told me, almost everything that I need to know to be able to train you. And that's the explanation of how Korin knows that, like, he is the Tiger. That's how Korin knows that, when he tells Saliath later on, it's like, Saliath, did you know that, when you two fought, after the fact, like, yeah, the street was destroyed, yeah, you paid for it, but people still hated you for that, because, imagine right now you're driving to work and there is a giant pothole that's going to take 2.5 months to fill. And so now your 10-minute commute to work is now a 30-minute detour. So now you're 45 minutes to get to work when it used to take you 10. Great that it's been paid for. Still super annoying that it happened, right? And I've always said this before. I think for Saliath specifically, the best thing that this character needs right now is a humbling defeat. And it does not even have to be on the battlefield. I was thinking about this earlier. Most random of times, I was in the shower and I was thinking, how can I give Saliath strife? And one of the ideas that I came up with was that the engine that he is making, let's say he loses a patent on his engine. Someone from Legende Capsule Corp comes out and says, hey, I have this great new engine. It's been streamlined. It's been, we've got it in factories. We can produce thousands of them in a single week. And, I'm the inventor of it. And they steal Saliath's patent. Well, it may not be anything, to him. I don't know how Saliath would take that. But I feel like that would be, just a blow to him of like, damn, I was doing all this other stuff. I built this great thing. Someone took that from me. It's either that or he just needs to like lose. Because with the character Saliath, what I kind of always see is that he's almost optimistic to a naive fault. Which again, I am not saying that that is a bad thing for his character at all. I actually love that about him. But as the person who's trying to train him, it would be nice if there was a bigger sense of, man, I could lose. Like something could go really bad, right? Like the Ozaru could be real, and the next time it happens, will I be able to stop it, right? What if cutting the tail off didn't work, right? Then what? And that, honestly, that would have been my favorite ending for Struggle Against the Ozaru, is that he comes up with this plan. It works off without a hitch, except at the end he cuts the tail off and Koshoro's still an Ozaru. It's like, okay, now what, right? That's what I'm working on myself as the person who's trying to train these two people for Saliath, is trying to get him to kind of have something that he really has to overcome, and also to push his beliefs, push his boundaries. And I think that as a trainer, I think that's what everybody who's trying to train somebody should go to achieve, right? Because the very next thing that I do with Koshoro is that, yeah, I kind of push his beliefs a little bit. I was having this conversation with Ike at Hell's Gates of, why did Koshoro make the personal choice to change, right? Koshoro used to be this hardcore Yakuza criminal in these Saiyan gangs in Sector 8. Why did he stop? He's in Ike. I'm going to show you guys the conversation. Ike was like, oh, well, he went to jail. I'm like, okay, a lot of people go to jail and they come out and do the exact same shit. Coco didn't. Why did he change? And he told me something else. I'm like, that is all outside influences. And what he lands on is that he says that my father, whose strength goes beyond martial arts, is what changed me. I still would say that's bullshit, and that's not a good enough excuse, right? And that's what I have, as Korin, have been trying to do, is to really push Koshoro to come to the conclusion himself of, I changed, but why did I change? Did I need to change, right? So a couple of the other ideas that I had was, what if Coco goes back to doing his Yakuza-style things, which would be a terrible character regression if he did, to be perfectly honest. But if he were to regress, not to do things for the wrong reasons, but to do them for the right reasons, right? Like, make Koshoro Batman. Make him chaotic good. You do the maximum amount of good that you deem you can do. You will cross the line of the law if you need to, but you will do that maximum amount of good. Because at some point he didn't care, right? This character did not care at all about the law. And what made him, right? Sure, he works for the EDF now, but does he really want to do it? Is that really who he is? And that's kind of what I'm hoping that we find out in this next training arc. So to summarize what happens, Korin shows up. He kind of pushes the boundaries for these two characters, really makes them question if they're okay. And what I was talking earlier about Fusen is that, and I don't know if it came off the way that I was trying to say it, but there is really no difference between these two characters and Fusen, except Fusen's targets are more innocent, right? Fusen wants power for his own sake, which is what Koshoro was saying earlier. Like, he's like, yeah, if I stop people like Fusen, great, but I want to get stronger for me. Fusen has a more of like, I need to get stronger to achieve this goal, but he also, the strength is within him. Saliath is kind of the same way. He's like, I just want to get stronger. I want to get stronger to protect people from people like Fusen. And then Korin's like, you're no different from people like Fusen. Like, when you guys start to fight, when you guys start to clash, when you start to have these powers that are going beyond mortal means, you're putting mortal people in danger. So, you got two bazookas. It's just who's aiming where, and, when are they choosing to fire? That's what's kind of making, the hero or the villain. And that's really the whole point that I'm trying to push across with Corrin here, of you could be the villain the very next day, or in some people's eyes you already are. So it's all about a matter of perspective. But I had fun, doing this. I really enjoyed that I got a chance to kind of like riz on people's stories a little bit. Excuse me, and just throw a wrench in there, and to hopefully make people think, and hopefully make these people, or make these characters, sorry, at least cognizant of what they are trying to achieve in this fantasy role-playing drama, because that's all that it is, and it's fun. I don't think that if Corrin was just like, everybody's friend and made everybody feel great all the time, I don't think that you would ever achieve anything out of that. I don't think that you would have any growth out of that. They may come out of this thinking that Corrin isn't as pure as maybe they thought, or maybe he's exactly what they thought. But I had fun, and I think that these two characters did very well. I never have anything ill to say about the people who are role playing here. You guys did absolutely fine. You stayed in character. You role played your characters, and you role played your characters without any previous notation of what was coming. So it was like, yeah, here's a wall that I'm going to put in front of you. You have to climb it. And you guys, you just did it. And I think that is role play in its most purest form of, you don't know what's coming. You're forced to make decisions. You're forced to talk about things that you may not have thought of from the perspective of this character. And, it changes people, it changes stories, and it hopefully evolves into better ones. So I can't wait for part 3 of this training, which will hopefully be the last part. I want to kick you guys off the tower and get you back out into the world soon, because other things are afoot, as they say. So I appreciate your time. I've talked your ears off, and I will see you guys next time.